Admiral Taiho Park stood alone on the bridge of the Unyielding. The great ship floated in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, far from Earth, far from everything he loved. Through the wide windows, he could see 1,000 stars burning in the black void. Each one was a sun. Each one might have worlds spinning around it. And now, none of them wanted anything to do with humanity. The message had come 3 hours ago. Taiho had read it 7 times. He still could not believe it. The Galactic Council. That ancient group of alien civilizations that ruled most of the known galaxy had made their decision. Humanity was now on the restricted species list. No alien civilization could trade with Earth. No alien government could sign treaties with humans. No alien ship could enter human space without special permission that would never be given. Earth was alone. Taiho was 52 years old. He had spent 30 years in space. He had shaken hands with Velari diplomats and shared meals with Turani traders. He had believed, truly believed, that humanity would one day take its place among the stars as equals. That dream was dead now. The door behind him opened with a soft sound. He did not turn around. "Admiral," said a young voice. "Director Kang is calling from Earth. She wants to speak with you." Taiho nodded slowly. "Put her through." The holographic screen flickered to life, and Unikong appeared before him. She was 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too much. As director of the United Earth Defense Council, she was the most powerful human alive. Right now, she looked tired. "You received the message," she said. "It was not a question. I did." The council voted unanimously. Even the Turani, who we thought were our friends. Even the small species we helped during the border wars. Yuna's voice was flat, empty. They all agreed. Humanity must be contained. Taiho finally turned to face her image. "Why? What did we do wrong?" Yuna laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Nothing. Everything. We exist, Taiho. That is our crime." She paused. "The Velor have been watching us for 200 years. They have studied our history, our wars, our rise from nothing to a spacefaring species in less than a century. And they are afraid, terrified." Yuna leaned closer to the camera. "Do you know what Elder Morok said during the council session? He said humans are broken. He said every other species evolved with one strength. The Velori have logic. The Keith have unity. The Torani have patience. But humans? We have everything. We are peaceful and violent. We are selfish and selfless. We love and we hate with equal power." Morok said, "We are chaos given flesh." Taiho said nothing. He had heard these arguments before from aliens who smiled at him while fearing what he might become. "The younger officers are angry," he said finally. "Captain Hunsu Lee and Commander Sora Choi came to me this morning. They believe this is only the beginning. They think the council will try to destroy us." "They might be right. And what do you believe, Director?" Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "I believe in diplomacy. I believe we can still talk our way out of this. The council is afraid because they do not understand us. If we show them we are not a threat, if we are patient and calm, they will lift the restrictions. And if they do not, then we will face that day when it comes." Yuna straightened her shoulders. "For now, Admiral, bring your fleet home. Stay within our borders. Do nothing that might be seen as aggressive. We must give them no excuse to act against us." The transmission ended. Taiho stood alone again, looking at the stars. He wanted to believe Yuna was right. He wanted to believe that patience would save them. But deep in his gut, in the place where soldiers learn to trust their instincts, he felt something cold and heavy. This was not the end of humanity's troubles. This was only the beginning, far from Earth. On a space station called Haven's Gate, a young Turani diplomat named Rilla walked through crowded corridors. Haven's Gate was neutral ground, a place where all species could meet and trade. The station was shaped like a great wheel, spinning slowly to create gravity. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds lived here, worked here, did business here. Rilla was small for her species, with blue-green skin and large dark eyes that could see in near darkness. She had been born on a water world, swimming before she could walk. Now, she spent her days in meetings and conferences, speaking careful words that meant nothing. She hated it. Today, she had a secret meeting, one that could cost her everything. If the council discovered it, the human was waiting in a small bar near the station's lower levels. His name was Minho Beak. He was a traitor, officially. Unofficially, he was one of humanity's best intelligence gatherers. A man who collected secrets the way others collected coins. "You should not have come," Minho said as Rilla sat across from him. He was young, with sharp eyes and a quick smile that never quite reached them. "If the Valori find out you are meeting with a human, then I will face the consequences." Rilla leaned forward. "But you needed to know." The council's vote was not just about isolation. Minho's smile faded. "What do you mean?" "The Valori are building something? Ships? Weapons? I do not know exactly what, but the numbers are too large for simple defense." Rilla's voice dropped to a whisper. "They are planning to seal the Sol system completely. Not just with laws, but with force. No ship in, no ship out. They want to trap humanity in its own home until you wither and die." Minho's face went pale, but his voice stayed steady. "How long do we have?" "I do not know. Months, maybe a year or two." Rilla reached across the table and touched his hand. Her skin was cool and slightly damp. "I am sorry, Minho. I tried to speak against this. I tried to make them see that humans are not monsters. But they would not listen. The fear runs too deep. Why are you telling me this?" Rilla pulled her hand back. She looked away, toward the window where stars burned cold and distant. "Because I believe the council is wrong. Because I have met humans and found them strange and confusing, and sometimes frightening, but never evil. Because my grandfather once told me that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats those it fears." She stood up. "Go home, Minho Beak. Tell your people what I have told you. Prepare for what is coming." She paused at the door. "And if the darkness falls, remember that not all aliens wanted this. Some of us will remember that humans deserved better." Then she was gone, vanishing into the crowded corridor. Minho sat alone for a long time. Then he paid his bill, walked to his ship, and sent a coded message to Earth. The storm was coming, and humanity needed to be ready. 3 years passed like a slow poison. Earth changed. The great cities still stood, the farms still grew food, the factories still made goods. But something was different now. The sky that once promised adventure now felt like a ceiling. The stars that once called to humanity now seemed to watch with cold, judging eyes. On Mars, in a research station buried beneath red sand, Dr. Yoonji Shin worked alone in her laboratory. She was 38 years old, thin and tired, with dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. On her screens, data scrolled endlessly. Numbers, patterns, secrets. She had found something. Something that made her hands shake for months. She'd been studying strange signals coming from the outer edges of the Sol system. The signals were small, almost invisible against the background noise of space. Most sensors would miss them completely. But Yoonji's equipment was special, built with technology she had designed herself. The signals were not natural. They were artificial, and they were everywhere. Drones. Thousands of them. Tiny machines floating in the darkness, watching, recording, sending information back to somewhere far away. The Valori were spying on humanity. EUNG gathered her findings and sent them to Earth. 3 days later, she was standing before Admiral Tai-Ho Park and Director Yuna Kong in a secure room beneath Geneva. "They are mapping everything," Yoonji explained, pointing to a holographic display. "Our shipyards. Our defense stations. The positions of our fleets. They are counting our weapons, measuring our capabilities, finding our weak points." Tai-Ho's face was hard as stone. "How long have they been watching?" "At least 2 years. Maybe longer." Yoonji shook her head. "They are very careful. The drones are designed to look like space debris. If I had not been searching for exactly this kind of signal, I would never have found them." Una stood by the window, looking out at the gray Geneva sky. Rain was falling, as it often did in this city. She had not spoken since the meeting began. "Director?" Taiho said softly. "They are not just watching us," Una said without turning around. "They are preparing. You do not map your neighbor's house unless you plan to break in." "What do we do?" Una finally turned. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, but her voice was steady. "We find out exactly what they are planning, and we prepare for the worst." Far from Earth, near the edge of human space, a small patrol ship called the Swift Arrow drifted through the darkness. Its commander was Lieutenant Do-Yan Quan, a young man of 26, with more courage than experience. Do-Yan had been assigned to this quiet sector, because his superiors thought it was safe. Nothing happened here. Nothing important anyway. Just empty space and distant stars. That changed when his communication officer detected a strange signal. "Lieutenant," said the officer, "a woman named Jiwoo. I am picking up something unusual. Encrypted traffic. Very high-frequency source. Beyond our border? About 2 light-hours away." Jiwoo frowned at her screens. "It looks like Keth's communication patterns." Do-Yan felt his stomach tighten. The Keth were insectoids, a species that moved and thought as one great swarm. They were loyal members of the Galactic Council and had voted eagerly for humanity's isolation. What were they doing so close to human space? "Can you decode it?" "I can try." Took 6 hours. When Jiwoo finally cracked the encryption, her face went white. "Lieutenant," she whispered, "you need to see this." The message was a fleet deployment order. 147 Keth warships were moving into position near the human border. The official reason was defensive exercises. But the formations described in the order were not defensive. They were attack formations. The Keth were preparing to invade. Do-Yan sent the information to Earth immediately. Then he sat in his captain's chair and stared at the stars outside his window. Somewhere out there, in the darkness beyond human space, an army was gathering. And he was just one small ship, one small man, standing between that army and his home on Earth. The evidence piled up like snow in winter. Captain Han-Soo Lee and Commander Sora Choi were sent on a mission so secret that only 4 people knew about it. Their target was a Valerie communication hub on a moon in a system 3 weeks. Travel from Earth. The hub controlled information flow across a dozen sectors. If the Valori were planning something, evidence of it would pass through that station. The mission was dangerous. The moon was heavily guarded. Han-Soo and Sora would have to land secretly, infiltrate the station, copy its data, and escape without being detected. If they were caught, Earth would deny all knowledge of their mission. They would be alone. They went anyway. The infiltration took 12 hours. Sora almost died twice. Once when a patrol came within meters of her hiding spot. Once when a security door nearly crushed her hand. Han-Soo had to kill a Valerie technician who stumbled upon him in a corridor. He broke the alien's neck with his bare hands and hid the body in a storage room. When they finally reached the central data core, Han-Soo connected his equipment and began copying files. There were millions of them. He could not read most of them, but the translation software caught certain words, certain phrases. Humanity, threat, permanent solution, authorized action. Then he found the file labeled with a code name, Silent Extinction. He opened it, he read it, and his blood turned to ice. The Galactic Council had voted in secret session to authorize what they called preemptive pacification of Earth. The plan called for a combined fleet of Valerii, Keth, and other Council species to blockade the Sol system. All human ships would be destroyed. All human colonies outside Earth would be eliminated. Then, slowly, over decades, humanity would be reduced to a pre-industrial state. Their technology would be taken. Their knowledge would be erased. They would be trapped on their homeworld forever, powerless and primitive, unable to ever threaten the galaxy again. If they resisted, they would be exterminated completely. The operation was scheduled to begin in 8 months. Han-Soo copied everything. Then he and Sora fled into the night, stole a small ship, and raced toward home. 3 weeks later, they stood before Director Yuna Kong and Admiral Taiho Park. The room was silent as Hansu explained what they had found. When he finished, no one spoke for a long time. Yuna's hands were shaking. For 3 years she had counseled patience. For 3 years she had believed that diplomacy could save them. She had told her people to wait, to be calm, to give the council no excuse to act. And all that time the council had been planning their extinction. "I was wrong," she said softly. Her voice cracked on the words. "I was so wrong." Taiho stepped forward. "Director, what are your orders?" Yuna looked up at him. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. The woman who had believed in peace was gone. In her place stood something harder, something forged by betrayal and fear and rage. "They want to destroy us," she said. "They want to erase everything we are, everything we have built, everything we might become. They are coming for our children, Taiho. Our children." She stood up. Her hands stopped shaking. "Then we strike first. We strike so hard that they will never forget. We show them exactly why they were right to fear us." Her voice rose. "Send the message to all commands, all ships, all stations. The Council wants a war. Then let us give them one they will remember for 1,000 years." Admiral Taiho Park saluted. For the first time in 3 years, there was fire in his eyes. "Yes, Director, it will be done." The silence before the storm had ended. Now came the thunder. Director Unikong stood in a small room with bare walls and harsh lights. Before her was a camera, a simple machine that would carry her words across the stars. Behind her stood Admiral Taiho Park, Captain Hansu Lee, Commander Sora Choi, and a dozen other officers. All of them wore their formal uniforms. All of them had faces hard with determination. In 15 minutes, every communication frequency in the galaxy would carry her message. The Council's networks, built over thousands of years, would be flooded with a single transmission. Every ship, every station, every world that could receive a signal would hear what she was about to say. There would be no going back after this. "Are we ready?" Yuna asked. "All systems standing by," a technician replied. "Broadcasting in 30 seconds." Yuna straightened her collar. She had written her speech a dozen times, changing words, cutting sentences, adding new ones. In the end, she had thrown away everything and decided to speak from her heart. The light on the camera turned red. She began, "Citizens of the Galaxy, members of the Council. This is Director Yuna Kang of the United Earth Defense Council, speaking on behalf of all humanity. For 3 years, you have watched us. You isolated our children from the stars. You called us dangerous. You called us chaotic. You called us a threat. And all that time, while you pointed at us and spoke of peace, you were planning our extinction. Yes, we know. We know about silent extinction. We know about the fleets gathering at our borders. We know about the drones spying on our homes. We know everything. You thought we would wait. You thought we would sit quietly while you sharpened your knives. You thought that when your ships finally came, we would be helpless. Surprised, afraid. You were wrong. Today, the Sol System declares war on the Galactic Council. It's not for conquest. We do not want your worlds, not for revenge. We do not want your blood. We fight for one reason, and one reason only: survival. You made us enemies. You gave us no choice. And now you will see what humanity becomes when it has nothing left to lose. To the Valori, you are old and proud and convinced of your own wisdom. You think you understand everything. You understand nothing. You have forgotten what it means to fight for your life. We will remind you. To the Keth, you are many, but you are one mind. When that mind breaks, your swarm will scatter like dust in the wind. We will break it. To all the species who voted for our extinction, we know your names. We know your worlds. We know where your children sleep. This is not a threat. This is a promise. When this war ends, and it will end, you will remember why you feared us. You will remember that humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not die quietly. The stars belong to all who dare to reach for them. You tried to lock us out. Instead, you have unleashed us. May your gods have mercy on you, because we will not." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds and 10,000 ships, beings of every species stared at their screens in stunned silence. No one had ever declared war on the Council. Wars happened slowly, growing from small conflicts into large ones. They began with arguments and escalations and accidents. No one simply stood up and announced their intention to fight. The humans had done the impossible. They had done the insane, and they were not bluffing. 3 hours after Yuna's broadcast, Operation First Light began. Admiral Taiho Park had been preparing for months. While Yuna counseled patience to the public, Taiho had quietly moved ships and supplies into hidden positions throughout the outer Sol system. Asteroid bases had been converted into ammunition depots. Mining stations had been turned into repair facilities. Civilian ships had been armed with weapons that looked like sensor equipment. When the order came, 3 human fleets emerged from hiding like wolves from the forest. The First Fleet, led by Captain Han Su Lee, struck a Valerie observation post above a gas giant. The aliens had no warning. One moment, the space was empty. The next moment, human ships were everywhere, firing missiles and energy weapons. The Valori station lasted 6 minutes before it became a cloud of burning metal. The Second Fleet, commanded by a veteran officer named Jung Ho Yoon, attacked a Keth supply convoy near the border. The insectoid ships were larger and more numerous, but the humans were faster and more precise. Gung Ho's pilots flew through the enemy formation, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. When the battle ended, 17 Keth ships were disabled or destroyed. Humanity lost 4. The Third Fleet, under Admiral Taiho himself, did something no one expected. Instead of attacking a military target, Taiho led his ships to a council communications relay, a massive station that carried messages between dozens of systems. His ships surrounded the station and broadcast a simple ultimatum: surrender or die. The station surrendered. Taiho's technicians boarded the station and began downloading everything in its memory banks: fleet movements, supply routes, command codes, the kind of information that could change the course of a war. Across the galaxy, the Council received reports of the attacks. Elder Morok of the Velor read them with shaking hands. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, disorganized. Their ships were supposed to be crude and easily destroyed. Instead, they were fighting with precision and fury that rivaled the best Council forces. Their weapons cut through Valerie's shields like they were made of paper. Their pilots flew with a reckless courage that bordered on madness. They did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. How? Morak demanded of his advisors. How are they doing this? No one had an answer. The answer was Dr. Yoonji Shin. For 3 years. While Earth appeared to wait peacefully, Yoonji and her team had been studying every piece of alien technology they could find. Salvaged equipment from old battles. Samples traded through black markets. Data stolen by spies like Minho Beak. They had learned how Velor shields worked, how Keth sensors detected threats, how Council ships communicated with each. Other than they had designed weapons specifically. To defeat those systems, human missiles now carried warheads that vibrated at the exact frequency needed to collapse Valerie's shields. Human sensor jammers filled Keth communications with noise that drove the insects into confusion. Human ships could listen to Council's transmissions and decode them in minutes. The galaxy had spent thousands of years building their technology. Humanity had spent 3 years learning to destroy it. On Haven's Gate, the neutral space station, Rila watched the news reports with something she had not felt in years. Hope, the Tirani diplomat, had risked everything to warn Minho Beak about the Council's plans. She had expected humanity to prepare defenses, to build walls, to hunker down and wait for the attack. She had not expected them to strike first. She should have known better. Her communication device buzzed. It was a message from Minho. "Thank you," the message said. "Your warning gave us the time we needed. We will not forget our friends. When this is over, the tyranny will have a choice to make. We hope you choose wisely." Rilla read the message 3 times. Then she made a decision. She was done being careful, done being silent, done watching from the sidelines while the council destroyed a species that had done nothing wrong. She began sending messages of her own. 2 friends in the tyranny government. 2 contacts in other species who had whispered doubts about the council. "To anyone who might listen, the war has begun," she wrote. "Humanity is fighting alone, but they do not have to. If you ever believe the council was wrong, now is the time to act. Not with weapons, not yet, but with resistance. Refuse to send ships against Earth. Refuse to share intelligence. Slow your production of war supplies. Every small act of defiance helps. Every act of courage counts." She did not know if anyone would listen, but she had to try. The galaxy was burning, and somewhere in the flames, hope was still alive. The galaxy had expected a quick war. The council had expected to crush humanity within weeks, to swat away these upstart primates like insects and return to the peace of 1,000,000 years. They had expected humanity to break. They had never been more wrong. 6 months into the war, the council's grand strategy lay in ruins. Every battle brought new horrors, new surprises, new reasons to fear the species they had once dismissed. Human ships did not fight like other ships. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire at proper distances. They charged. They dodged. They hid behind asteroids and jumped out screaming. They flew into impossible spaces through debris fields and gas clouds in places no sane pilot would go. They turned every battle into chaos, and in chaos, humans thrived. Admiral Taiho Park became a legend. His tactics were studied by council commanders who could not understand them. In one famous battle, he ordered half his fleet to shut down all power and drift like dead ships. When the enemy approached to confirm the kills, the dark ships suddenly roared to life, surrounding the enemy from all sides. 200 council vessels were destroyed in an hour. In another battle, Taiho sent tiny, unmanned drones packed with explosives into an enemy formation. The drones were painted to look like escape pods and the council ships. Following their rules about rescuing survivors, let them approach. The explosions that followed crippled an entire Keth battle group. The council called these tactics dishonorable. Taiho called them effective. But no human commander earned more fear than Commander Sora Choi. The Battle of Station Vorn would be remembered for centuries. Vorn was a civilian station, home to 30,000 humans who had been living on the edge of council space before the war. When the conflict began, they were trapped behind enemy lines. The council fleet moved to capture them as hostages. Sora was sent to evacuate them. She had 12 ships against 60. The odds were impossible. She did not care. The evacuation took 18 hours. 18 hours of constant fighting, constant dying, constant refusing to give up. Sora's ships formed a wall between the enemy and the civilian transports. Every time a transport filled with refugees, it would race towards safety while Sora's warriors held the line. One by one, her ships were destroyed. One by one, her friends died. But the transports kept leaving, carrying thousands of people to safety. In the final hours, Sora's own ship was crippled. Her engines were dead. Her weapons were gone. She had 17 soldiers left, and they were almost out of ammunition. The Valori sent ground troops to take the station's last docking bay. Sora met them there. For 6 hours, she and her 17 soldiers held that corridor. They fought with guns until the guns were empty. They fought with knives until the knives broke. They fought with bare hands and pieces of metal torn from the walls. When the rescue fleet finally arrived, they found Sora standing alone in a corridor filled with 200 dead Valori soldiers. Her armor was shattered. Her face was covered in blood. In her hand was a Valori blade she had taken from an officer she had killed. The last transport had escaped 30 minutes before. Every civilian had been saved. Sora became a symbol. Songs were written about her. Children were named after her. Across Earth, people watched recordings of her final stand and wept with pride. But the war demanded more than heroes. It demanded sacrifice. Captain Hansu Lee had been fighting since the first day. He had led more battles than he could count, destroyed more enemy ships than he wanted to remember. He had watched friends die and kept fighting. He had received wounds that would have stopped lesser men and kept fighting. The Battle of Earth's shipyards broke him, a Velori dreadnought, 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons, had somehow slipped through human defenses. It was heading for the shipyards above Jupiter, where humanity built its warships. If those shipyards were destroyed, the war would be lost. Hansu was the only commander close enough to stop it. He had 4 ships. The dreadnought had shields that could survive nuclear weapons. The math was simple. There was no way to win. Hansu called his crews together on the communication screen. He saw their faces, young and old, scared and brave. He had served with some of them for decades. Others he barely knew. "You know what we have to do?" he said quietly. "I will not order anyone to follow me. If you want to leave, there is no shame in it. This is not about duty. This is about choice." No one left. They flew straight at the dreadnought. 3 ships were destroyed in the first minute, torn apart by the giant's weapons. Hansu's ship took hit after hit, losing sections, losing crew, losing everything that kept it alive. But he kept going. In the final moment, Su aimed his dying ship at the dreadnought's engine section. The part where the shields were weakest, the part where a direct impact might, just might, cause a chain reaction. His last transmission was heard across the human fleet. "Tell my family I love them. Tell Earth we did our job." Explosion was visible from Mars. The dreadnought broke in half and tumbled into Jupiter's gravity well, where the crushing pressure destroyed it completely. Hansu Lee and his crews died. The shipyards survived. The war was not won by heroes alone. It was won by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Lieutenant Do-Yan Kwan, the young officer who had first discovered the Keth invasion fleet, found himself at the Battle of Proxima Reach. The Keth had sent their largest swarm, 40,000 drones controlled by a single queen carrier. No human fleet was large enough to fight them directly, but Do-Yan had an idea. The queen carrier was the brain of the swarm. Without it, the drones would lose coordination. They would become confused, purposeless, easy targets. If someone could destroy the queen carrier, the entire swarm would fall. Do-Yan volunteered to lead the strike. He took 20 bombers through a debris field that the Keth sensors could not penetrate. They flew for hours in darkness, navigating by starlight and prayer. When they emerged, they were directly behind the queen carrier. In the one place the Keth had not bothered to defend, the bombing run lasted 12 seconds. 18 of the 20 bombers were destroyed. Do-Yan's ship survived by flying so close to the queen carrier that the Keth weapons could not target him without hitting their own ship. The queen died. 40,000 drones went dark, drifting aimlessly through space. The human fleet arrived to find a battle already won. Do-Yan became an instant hero. He was promoted, decorated, given command of his own squadron. But when reporters asked him how he felt, he could only think of the 18 pilots who had died following him into that debris field. "We survived," he said. "That is enough." Meanwhile, Dr. Yoonji Shin was captured. A council strike team had found her research station on Mars during a bombardment. The attack killed millions of colonists and destroyed years of work. Yoonji was taken alive, transported to a Velori prison ship, and interrogated for weeks. She told them nothing. They broke her bones. She told them nothing. They starved her. She told them nothing. They threatened to kill everyone she had ever loved. She laughed in their faces. "Do not understand humans," she told her interrogators. "We are not brave because we do not feel fear. We are brave because we feel fear and fight anyway. You cannot break what is already broken and rebuilt 1,000 times." Her words were recorded by Council Intelligence. They were meant to be studied, analyzed, used against humanity. Instead, they spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species who had supported the Council began to whisper. Species who had stayed neutral began to ask questions. If humans could endure such suffering and remain unbroken, what did that say about them? What did that say about the council that had tried to destroy them? On Earth, Director Unikong received news of Yunji's capture. She received news of Hansu's death. She received news of every battle won and lost, every planet burned, every child orphaned by the war she had started. She did not cry. She did not break. She could not afford to. Send another fleet, she ordered. Hit their supply lines. Make them bleed. And find Dr. Shin. Find her and bring her home. The war continued. The galaxy burned. And humanity refused to die. 1 year after Unikong's declaration, the Galactic Council assembled its final fleet. 2,000 warships from a dozen species gathered at the edge of the Sol system. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains. Carrier ships holding millions of drones. Battle cruisers armed with weapons that could crack planets. Elder Morak stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars through ancient eyes. Behind those stars was Earth. Behind Earth was the end of the human problem. Today we finish this, he said to his officers. Today, we prove that the Council's wisdom cannot be defied. Today we erase humanity from history. The fleet moved forward. Sensors showed 300 human ships waiting near Earth, a pathetic defense against overwhelming power. Morak almost felt sorry for them. Almost as the Council fleet approached, something strange began to happen. The human ships started broadcasting on all frequencies. Not threats. Not pleas for mercy. Music, thousands of voices singing in dozens of languages. Old songs and new ones. Battle hymns and lullabies. The sound of a species that had faced extinction before and refused to accept it. Morak did not understand. He ordered his fleet to continue. Admiral Taiho Park watched the enemy approach from the bridge of the Unyielding. His ship was battered from a year of fighting. Half its weapons were offline. Its shields were held together by engineering miracles and pure stubbornness. It did not matter. Today was not about the Unyielding. Today was about something much bigger. All ships, Taiho broadcast, begin the retreat. Draw them toward Luna. Do not engage directly until you reach the kill zone. The human fleet fell back, firing as they went. Council ships pressed forward eagerly, sensing victory. They pushed through Earth's outer defense grid, through the asteroid stations, through the satellite networks. Each step brought them closer to the human homeworld. Each step brought them closer to the trap Luna. Earth's moon had always been humanity's first colony. Millions of people had lived there, worked there, built their dreams there. When the war began, most of them had been evacuated. The facilities had been stripped. The cities had gone dark, but on the far side of Luna, hidden from every sensor the Council possessed, humans had built something new, the Genesis Array. For 3 years, while the galaxy watched Earth, humanity's greatest scientists had worked in secret. They had studied the sun, learned its patterns, understood its fury, and they had built a machine that could focus that fury into a weapon. The array could trigger solar flares with precision. It could direct streams of plasma across millions of kilometers. It could turn any star into a gun pointed at anyone who dared threaten humanity's home. It was the ultimate deterrent, the final card. The reason humanity had been willing to fight? A war they could not win, because they had always known how the war would end. The Council fleet reached the kill zone, that carefully calculated sphere of space around Luna where the Genesis Array's weapons could reach every ship. 2,000 vessels crowded together, preparing for their final assault on Earth. Yuna Kong's voice cut through every communication channel. Elder Morak, stop. Morak froze. His officers looked at each other in confusion. How had the humans hacked into their command frequency? You have brought your fleet to our door, Yuna continued. You have come to destroy us, to burn our world, to murder our children, and you believe you have already won. On the flagship screen an image appeared. Luna, and rising from its dark surface, a structure of impossible size. Metal and crystal and pulsing energy pointed directly at the Council fleet. This is the Genesis Array, Yuna said. In 3 seconds, I will give you a demonstration of what it can do. A beam of light erupted from the array. It was not aimed at the fleet. It was aimed at a distant asteroid, a rock the size of a small moon floating harmlessly in space. The asteroid did not explode. In the span of a heartbeat, billions of tons of rock became a cloud of glowing vapor. The Council fleet went silent. That was 1% power, Una said. At full power, the array can sterilize every ship in your fleet in under a minute. You would not even have time to scream. Morak's voice cracked when he spoke. You are bluffing. Am I? Una laughed, and there was no joy in it. Elder Morak, you have spent a year trying to extinguish our sun. You have burned our colonies, killed our people, tried to erase everything we are, and now you stand in the shadow of our greatest weapon, and you still do not understand. The screen changed. It showed a map of the galaxy. On that map, every Council homeworld was marked with a red dot, and next to each was a number. Every star in your territory is a loaded gun, Una said. We have mapped them all. We know their patterns, their weaknesses, their potential. If the Genesis array fires on your fleets today, do you think we will stop there? Do you think we will be satisfied with victory? She paused. Let the silence stretch. You wanted to destroy us because you were afraid. You should have been more afraid. Because now we are angry. And angry humans do not stop until there is nothing left to fight. Morak stared at the red dots on the map. His homeworld. His family. His people. All of them within reach of human weapons. What do you want? He whispered. Leave. Now. Go back to your worlds and tell the Council that Earth is no longer a threat to be eliminated. Earth is a species to be negotiated with. Respected, feared. Taiho Park watched from his bridge as the Council fleet began to withdraw. Ship after ship turned away from Earth, their weapons powering down, their engines carrying them back toward the darkness they had come from. It was over. 6 months later, the Treaty of Haven's Gate was signed. Humanity was removed from the restricted species list. The prohibition on alliances was lifted. Reparations were paid for the colonies that had been destroyed. The galaxy would never be the same, Commander. Sora Choi became humanity's first ambassador to the Tirani Collective. Rila, the diplomat who had risked everything to warn them, was there to greet her. They shook hands like old friends, though they had never met in person. Thank you, Sora said. Your warning saved us. Rila smiled. Your courage saved yourselves. I simply gave you a little more time. Lieutenant Doyan Quan was given command of the new Solar Defense Fleet. His job was to protect Earth. To ensure that no enemy would ever threaten humanity's homeworld again, it was a heavy responsibility. He accepted it without hesitation. Dr. Yoonji Shin was rescued in a prisoner exchange. When she returned to Earth, she was thin and scarred and forever changed by what she had endured. But she went back to her laboratory the next day. There was still work to do. Admiral Taiho Park retired to Mars, to the colony that had been rebuilt from the ashes of Council bombardment. He planted a garden outside his small house, tomatoes, peppers, things that grew in red soil under artificial suns. When reporters asked him about the war, he just smiled and went back to his plans. Director Unicong did not retire. She could not. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do with its new power. She had to show them. She stood before the new Galactic Assembly, representing a species that had been condemned to extinction and had refused to die. You asked why humans are dangerous, she said. It is not our weapons. It is not our ships. It is not even our anger, though that is terrible enough. She looked around the chamber, at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. It is that we do not know when to quit. We do not know when we have lost. We fight when we should surrender. We hope when we should despair. We love so fiercely that we will burn galaxies to protect what we love. Let her words settle into silence. But we can learn to build instead of burn. We can be partners instead of enemies. We can share the stars instead of fighting over them. She spread her hands. The choice is yours. Work with us, and we will help you reach heights you never imagined. Stand against us, and we will remind you why you were afraid." The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began. Scattered at first, then growing. Species that had supported the war against humanity. Species that had stayed neutral. Species that had secretly helped. All of them clapping. All of them understanding in a universe of ancient civilizations who had forgotten how to fight, how to dream, how to burn. Humanity had remembered, and the galaxy would never make the mistake of underestimating them again, in his garden on Mars. Taiho Park looked up at the stars. They were the same stars he had watched as a young man dreaming of adventure. The same stars that had seemed so hostile during the years of isolation. The same stars that had witnessed humanity's darkest hour and brightest triumph. He raised a glass of water to the sky. To those who did not live to see this day, he said softly, "Hansu, the crews of the shipyard battle. Everyone who gave everything, he drank. We made it. We actually made it." Above him, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. But for the first time in a long time, they did not seem so cold. They seemed like home.